Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marissa Stahl, and I am the chair of the USC Young Alumni Council. I just want to give a brief intro, a little bit of information about the Young Alumni Association at USC and our event today. Like I mentioned, my name is Marissa Stahl, and I'm the chair of the Young Alumni Council. And in order to be considered a young alum, it's any graduate aged 35 and under. The amazing thing about the USC Alumni Association is that you don't have to join, you don't have to pay any dues, you're automatically a member as soon as you graduate from the university. For young alumni, we focus on programming for social and professional events for our demographic, which is age 35 and under. But that doesn't mean that you can't join one of our events if you're not in that category. We obviously welcome anyone, any alum, any friend of any alum, or anyone who's interested in anything that we're putting out there. And we aim to provide programming that will help you in your professional career, in networking, and in your social life as well. So definitely check us out if you aren't familiar. I would recommend following us on Facebook or Instagram and Twitter at USC Young Alumni on all platforms. We're always putting up upcoming events and notices about our community and kind of what's going on as a whole. And the Alumni Association website has a ton of different information about all of the events that are going on across the Alumni Association. So I definitely recommend checking that out as well. There's a ton of different alumni groups. We are considered a generational group, but there are groups based on your industry, based on pretty much any interest that you would be interested in. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker for tonight. We're so excited about this event and we think it will be very, very valuable for you. If you have any questions during the presentation, definitely use the Q&A feature and we'll make sure that Brian answers them for you and gets back to you. So definitely direct you there so we don't have any interruptions. I'm sure he's a pro at this, so he'll make sure everything is covered. But without further ado, Brian is the co-founder of Ralph Inc., which is a company based in Culver City that empowers talent to negotiate for better compensation. Ralph provides expertise in industry hiring practices, career trajectories, negotiation tactics, and salary market value. Prior to Ralph, Brian founded Leada, a Y Combinator-backed an education tech company that serves Johns Hopkins, Ohio State, NYU, Penn, and 15 other universities. Brian also just got named a 2021 Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient in the category of social impact. So we're so excited to have Brian with us tonight, and we know this will be a really valuable event. And thank you all so much for joining us. Brian?
Thanks, Marissa. And thanks, Christina, for helping organize this. Yeah, really excited to chat. And, I would love for this webinar to be like interactive. So, at any point, really feel free to either chat in the Q&A or unmute yourself and jump in and ask a question. I'll try to pause throughout the webinar to answer any questions so that it's not just me speaking the entire time. And then we're going to share like a feedback survey at the end too. So if you could fill out that feedback survey to receive the recording, that would also be great. So yeah, Marissa already kind of gave me a little bit of my background. I think just to give you a little bit more, Ralph now is about 3 years old. We've helped over 200 clients negotiate their job offers. And, the easiest way to think about what the business is, for people that are in LA, they can understand this analogy is we see ourselves as like agents for job candidates. So in the same way that athletes have agents, musicians have agents, top talent in other sectors like tech, healthcare, finance, et cetera, have the economic power really to negotiate more effectively with an agent. And so that's what we're providing. And for a little bit of context and kind of, where this company came from, how it started, basically it was in building Leada, my first company, as, a 4-person company hiring engineers. That's really where I learned what type of leverage candidates have. Because when you're like a 4-person startup trying to hire, it's really hard. It's actually really, really difficult. And the engineers I would try to recruit, they didn't even know how much leverage they really had in the negotiations. But it's in that experience that I basically saw the perspective of what it's like to hire and negotiate on the company side. And then, that company ended up shutting down. And then I basically had a friend that got a job offer that was below what she was currently making. And I asked her if she was going to negotiate the job offer. And she said, do you think I should? And I was just most surprised by the fact that she questioned whether she should or should not negotiate. And after just, really kind of at that time, it was, 3.5 years ago now, I just kind of pushed her to negotiate more and supporting her through the process. She ended up getting a nice increase from the offer from negotiating. And then I just thought, how many other individuals experience this information asymmetry when it comes to negotiating. And so, yeah, that's kind of how Ralph started. And that's like a little bit on me. So I'm going to be using this tool called pollev.com just to kind of like survey people as we go through this presentation. So, the first thing I'd love to do is get a better sense of like who are or what are the industries that you guys are all working in. And so, if you could go to pollev.com/Ralph, please, mark the most appropriate industry that you work in. Yeah, I didn't quite get all of them. I probably should have put like a NA or a other, but consulting, or if you're in music business, maybe finance. Oh, cool. A lot of nonprofits. Yeah, so just to give everyone a little bit of context for, who does Ralph serve right now, the majority of our candidates that we advise in the negotiations are in technology. We have also helped clients in biotechnology, in finance, and some nonprofits. But, those are predominantly the clients we work with. Ultimately, in terms of the content we give, actually, I'll share a little bit more information in another slide. But okay, this is good. Okay, and then wanted to get a sense for, what are people's experience right now as young alumni? How many times have you done an offer negotiation? This is interesting. Okay. So it seems like most people have either done it once or maybe never at all. That's really interesting, actually. I'm surprised that this being young alumni, maybe that you guys have maybe had tried it once, but that's good to know. That's all this content will be very useful then. Okay, so with the better sense of your guys' background, like I just wanted to share a little bit what my goal is for providing this webinar. And the goal really is to just share some of the experiences that I've accumulated from helping advise about 200 clients go through their career transition and offer negotiation. And when I say offer negotiation, what I mean is like new job offer negotiation. It's not for like raise or salary promotions negotiations. And negotiating is really hard, but it's actually not hard because you're bad at negotiating. The goal of this webinar is really to convey that it's hard because companies are experts at it, and they spend billions of dollars making it as easy as possible for them and really as difficult as possible for you. And part of why negotiating is hard is because the person you're negotiating with is a negotiating expert, right? This is usually the recruiter. And they are the hiring and market expert for the company, right? And they've done hundreds, if not thousands, of offer negotiations. And so when you're negotiating yourself, even as a young professional, you've done it once or twice, but you're never going to be as experienced as a recruiter is. And so part of this webinar is really just to share what are the tactics, what are the strategies, and how do recruiters think to optimize the negotiation on their end. And it's also further the case that more and more, like negotiating a job offer is becoming a very complex transaction. So, I'll give you an example of like how quickly this is changing. I don't know if you guys have heard of the company Waymo, but it's like the self-driving car company at Google. And, just recently, actually, we're helping a client right now with an equity package at Waymo. And this equity package doesn't even have normal options or restricted stock, which are already two type of securities that people aren't familiar with. But Waymo has actually made it even more confusing by creating their own security called a Waymo membership unit. And it has its own special cases for when and how you can sell it. And I don't know how a candidate is supposed to be able to like interview for their role and then pass the interviews and then be able to understand what a Waymo membership unit is and then negotiate the offer. Like that's just fundamentally an impossible situation for a candidate to be put through. And so, yeah, the goal really is just to bridge this. We all are aware of kind of this information gap where, we aren't aware of our market value. Companies are really aware of it. But there's also this really big experience gap, right? Like recruiters fundamentally have so much more experience and expertise at negotiating than candidates do. Okay, so the agenda for this webinar is, I first started with kind of what are my goals for being here talking with you guys tonight. Then I'll go into what I believe the fundamental disconnect is that exists between, how candidates think about offer negotiations and how companies think about it that ultimately lead to you guys, candidates losing. I'll go over a little bit then, what is, the reality of kind of how employment is today in the hiring market in terms of it being very transactional. And then we'll go into some negotiation stuff. So, what I'll share is the 3 most common negotiation tactics that companies all use for when negotiating with candidates. You guys will all face all 3 of these tactics. And then we'll go over the top 3 mistakes that we see candidates make when negotiating job offers. And then we'll end with a story from one of our clients that we feel is especially illuminating. And then we'll finish it off with Q&A. I think to qualify the kind of guidance we're going to be sharing here, because I think, we have helped basically, as I said, tech, finance, a little bit of nonprofits and biotech. Ultimately, for this advice to be applicable to you, one of 2 characteristics needs to apply. The first characteristic is that you know who your manager is. So when you get a job offer, you know who you're going to be reporting to, you know who your boss is. And then the second characteristic is that you can get at least 2 offers at the same time. With either of those 2 characteristics, you fundamentally have an ability to negotiate a significant more like power to negotiate than you are really aware of. And in that first characteristic of knowing your manager, the qualifier there is essentially if you're getting an offer where you're being hired as like a cohort, so like a rotational program or an intern class, it actually tends to be that your leverage and ability to negotiate is quite low, and it's really difficult. So those are the cases where our advice maybe wouldn't apply as much. Okay, so now I want to go into this fundamental disconnect, and I'll stop real quick. Yeah, so in terms of tactics for promotions so all of this stuff is for new hire. Like, promotions is this whole other beast that we plan to move into eventually, but right now we specifically have expertise on the new hire process. This other question, I'm going to stop in the middle and address. Okay, so the fundamental disconnect is that for all of the candidates here or employees here in this webinar, compensation is not your primary optimization. The type of work you do, the team you're working with, the problem you're solving, and the meaning of your work is more important. But on the other side of the negotiating table, you need to understand that they see your role as a business, right? And while they hope there's alignment on the mission, unless you are a nonprofit, right? This mission and you being, a family member of this corporate team is secondary to what the ultimate objective is, which is profit. And so what's really important before you go into an offer negotiation is really to just take a step back and change your mindset. Because what you need to do is think of the offer negotiation as a transaction that you're engaging with your employer, because that is exactly how the company is thinking about it. And that's exactly, companies have essentially become experts at optimizing these transactions. Especially when you're dealing with recruiters, all recruiters essentially act as like salespeople now. Like they have these hiring quotas. 5 engineers for 2021, and their entire job is based off of filling those quotas. And so they aren't going to be offended if you negotiate, and they aren't going to be offended if you interview, even though you're only kind of interested in the company, right? They deal with all of these minor things on a daily basis. And so, don't take the negotiation personal. Really think of it as a transaction, and recognize that you're engaging in a business. And I want to make the point that like this was not historically as much the case. Like 50 years ago, you would join a company and you would arguably spend your entire career there, right? And so if employment was a transaction, at least it was a long-term one, right? But today we have this kind of challenge of companies don't really invest in their talent, and because what they do now is that instead of promoting from within, it's easier for them to hire externally. Right now, I've worked with a compensation person at Facebook, and the average tenure at Facebook now is 17 months. That is insanely short. Like that's barely enough time to, 3-month onboarding. You maybe do a project for a year, and then you're already basically interviewing and you're leaving elsewhere, right? And the problem with what this is creating is just a very transactional environment, because if companies are, rather than promoting from within, they're hiring externally, that only makes it even more likely for companies to leave, employees to leave, right? So then if you're more likely to leave, that only makes it easier for companies to hire externally. And thus we have this virtuous cycle of employment being increasingly transactional, right? And that's why we all have this general belief now that when it comes to getting meaningful career advancements, you just have to switch companies, right? Which shouldn't necessarily be the case, but it is the way the labor market works today. And so, recognizing that, your relationship with your employer is business and it's very transactional, and you need to protect yourself first rather than protect your employer. So often we hear candidates feel guilty, and you should not feel guilty. You should never feel guilty exploring career opportunities elsewhere. You should never feel guilty, just interviewing at companies because you want to, test the waters, right? And you should never feel guilty negotiating. When COVID hit, basically approximately a year ago, right? There these 3 companies, right? Sonder in March 2020, COVID hit, they let off 33% of their employees. And then March, April, May, June, right? A couple months afterwards, they raised another $170 million at a $1.3 billion valuation. Carta, same situation. Opendoor, same situation, right? These companies had no guilt, like letting people go when they needed to. Like, you need to recognize that you are joining a business, and you should not feel guilty for protecting yourself. And one anecdote I like to share is just like, I was talking with a Microsoft recruiter that was saying that, or he was at Microsoft, 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't know whether this still exists now, but very likely so. But there was this team called the Compete team. Okay. And the Compete team was this team of recruiters that was tasked to actually find out what the competing offers at Facebook, Amazon, Google, et cetera, were offering, and then sharing that data back to the Microsoft recruiting team so they could use that data to negotiate with candidates, right? There's like a whole separate team just to give the recruiters more information, right? And it just exemplifies how involved and how much effort companies are putting in to optimize this process, and really behooves a candidate to, be more responsible with, taking care of their own needs and using resources that exist. And another reason why you shouldn't feel guilty is that, like, in 2009, like, several tech companies were literally caught breaking the law, right? Like, they were colluding with each other by doing these no poach agreements, by agreeing not to hire their other employees, which is fundamentally, illegal. And they got the U.S. government sued these companies, and they were found guilty. I highly recommend checking out this URL, whenrulesdon'tapply.com. It illuminates just like the fact that, like, these are businesses that are just trying to, like, thinking of this as a game and trying to optimize the game, but that and as candidates, you need to also think of it similarly. Okay, cool. So now I want to go into some of the negotiation tactics that you guys are all going to face. And before I do, I guess I'll stop for a little bit on some Q&A. So with so many people out of work due to the pandemic, do we have less leverage to negotiate now? Are companies less willing to bend knowing that there are so many candidates out there? Yeah, it's a really good question. So I would say that what we're seeing with all the clients we're advising is not that there is less room for companies to change offers, especially for these tech companies, right? Like, Amazon is like blowing up right now, right? Their stock has probably never been higher and the demand has never been greater. But we are seeing Amazon recruiters using COVID as like justifications to negotiate, right? And like, something we're seeing quite frequently is a lot of down leveling, right? So because there's so many candidates that are in the market right now and people are so anxious to either find something secure, is they're basically giving offers at a lower level and letting candidates grow into the role, right? And so it's really important to really be clear on the levels that you're applying to before you go into a job. And so that's probably the most egregious thing we're seeing in terms of companies taking advantage of a lot of supply. But like their actual ability to change offers, and especially in tech, has fundamentally it's actually only gotten better, so yeah. Okay, so the first common tactic that companies are going to do when negotiating with you is that they're going to try to get a number from you first. And ultimately a negotiation is about information. And this is truly where recruiters are experts at negotiating, because they will really innocuously collect information from you and they won't share any in return, right? And it won't feel like something wrong is going on here. So to give you kind of an example from one of our clients, Anonymize, Ashley was interviewing for a role at Facebook that she's really excited about. And then in the second phone conversation with the recruiter asks, like, hey, Ashley, just want to get a sense for what are your salary expectations, right? Or in the job application, you might have like desired salary, and they might ask you to fill out the form like before as you're applying, right? It's illegal in California to ask what your previous salary is, but we still have recruiters, whether they ask expectations or they ask in other ways, they essentially get at what your previous salary was. And the recruiters will also, do one of two other things, right? They'll try to position this as if they're on your side, and they'll say like, I'm trying to get you the very, very best offer possible, and I need this information so I can help you. Or they'll take a more third-party approach, and they'll say like, look, this is like HR policy. I can't do anything unless you provide me information first. This is not me. This is like HR. So if you guys are in Ashley's shoes and she was asking for your salary expectations, how would you feel? Yeah, so the majority of people would feel obligated to ask a number because the company's asking. You're worried you won't be able to continue through the interview process if you don't share this information, or you're going to feel confused. Totally makes sense. So the way you want to respond to this is that if in the job application they're asking you for your compensation or desired salary, just put market or just put negotiable. Or if they ask for a number, just put 0. Right? It really, really doesn't help you at all to share a number that early in the process, because either the number is too high and they actually change whether they interview you or not, or it's too low and they peg you to that low number once they give you an offer. If they're asking for your salary expectations while you're being interviewed, you really just want to say like, I can't say, right? Like I need to understand what this role involves by interviewing, and then I'm sure we can figure out a number that makes sense for both of us, right? If the company is really trying to just make sure you two are in the same ballpark, which is like the most practical reason why they would want to know know this number, right? Is like, I don't want to waste each other's time, right? So like, why don't you give us a number? It shouldn't be you, the one that's giving it, right? Like, they're the company that has the history of all the compensation that they can and cannot pay, right? If it's really about making sure that you two are in the same ballpark, they should be the ones sharing numbers, right? And so at a minimum, you should not share. You should always decline and say like, I don't know, I'm not really sure, I need you to do research, right? And if at a at a minimum, you should say like, how about you guys provide me a range, right? Because you guys have all the data, and I can give you a sense of whether that works for me. And so why is it important to hear numbers from a company first? It's important because the company can offer higher than what you're expecting. And ultimately, when companies are negotiating, they know that money is a big part of your decision, and they want to be, and they know for good talent, you are almost always going to be able to get more than one offer, right? And so what they want to do is basically pay $1 more than what your best offer is, right? And so that's why they ask either like, what else are you being offered, or what do you want, right? And so I'll give you an example of why it's important to get numbers from the company first. We had one client who got an offer at Pinterest and had a signing bonus of $20,000. And this client was interviewing at Facebook, and we didn't yet know what Facebook was offering yet. And so after the final round interview, the recruiter comes back to our client and says, hey, look, we're really excited about you, and I really need to know what the details of your other offers are, so I can get you the best offer, right? We decline, and he says, look, if I don't know what else you have in your offers, I will have to give you the standard offer. And your feedback, your interview feedback was so strong that I don't want to do that. And we decline again, right? We say, the standard offer is fine. We don't want to share the information. And so he comes back and he says, oh, I was actually really able to fight for you and get you an above average offer. And in that above average offer, the signing bonus is $50,000, right? And so you can see here that we've already made a $30,000 jump just from declining to share information about our signing bonus. And so the takeaway here is pretty simple. It's basically easy in theory, hard in execution. You just don't want to share numbers first, and you just need to have the confidence to stand firm on repeated asks. This will happen either at the application stage or before you receive an offer. But just expect it and remain firm. And I think, one last tactic I'll share is, one effective way we have our clients kind of refute this ask is to say like, look, like this has actually really hurt me before in my career when I've said this. And so I'd really appreciate it if we actually didn't do this, right? And when clients have said stuff like that, the recruiter, usually tries to have a little bit of empathy and know that like, yes, this does burn the candidate 9 times out of 10. So, it gets them to move forward. Okay. All right. I bet putting in 0 can filter you out in an online application. Well, my first advice actually would be that you should not focus on applying to jobs via online applications. You should try to do this all through networks. But if they're going to filter you because of a 0 in your desired salary, I would say that's probably not even worth going there. Do these tactics work on the phone or in person as well? Yeah, they work in both. So if the job description already shows a pay range, is it still okay to ask them to provide a number? I think at that point, they've essentially provided a number, right? So they probably wouldn't then ask you what your salary expectations are, and you probably wouldn't necessarily have that challenge. What if a company lies to you when you get your original offer? I was told I would be eligible for a raise in 6 months when I was hired, and then asked at the 6-month point. They then told me that merit raises aren't offered ever, and that the only movement ever in salaries is from COLAs. Yeah, I mean, I think so. This is in a raise negotiation, and the irony of a new job offer negotiation is that your best ability to change your compensation happens before you start your job, right? Like you think that like once I prove myself, right, they will make me whole, and that just isn't the case, right? Because once you're in the job, it's so easy just to give you both just like standard 3% raises, or to just delay them, right? In terms of, Sarah, what's happening to you here. And yeah, it's a really tough situation. I mean, I think ultimately the strongest thing you can do is to explore your options and look at other offers. I don't want to talk too much about the raised salaries promotion stuff because I actually don't have a ton of experience doing that. The one thing I'll say there is that, like, if you are going to bring counteroffers into a raise negotiation, before you even do that, you really want to find out what is the culture of the company, and what is the context for how appropriately or how do they normally respond when you do something like that? Because sometimes it can be interpreted quite negatively, and then that could, really damage your relationship with the company. But in general, our experience has been that you aren't going to get the company to change or do much unless you have unless you're able to walk away. I've seen applications that force you to input numbers when applying for a role, and I've been told that putting in 0 will filter you out, as will a super high number. I would just put in 0. Again, like, I haven't heard of applications filtering you out because you put 0. Like, that would really make very little sense from the company side, right? Because they haven't even assessed you yet, and they're not even going to like evaluate you. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and just continue with the tactics, and then we'll stop again for some more Q&A. So the second negotiation tactic you guys will all encounter is that a company will introduce offers in like confusing ways. I think a lot of candidates think that, and actually some honest companies do just give you a written offer, but it's really not as common as you'd think. They will introduce offers, like incomplete offers. They will only introduce offers verbally, or they will do so in confusing ways that I'm going to share now. So, one client, for example, was for a product manager role at a tech company. And in the phone call, the recruiter says, we're looking at a base salary of $140,000. How do you feel about that? All right, just on the spot with the candidate. And the candidate says, yeah, I think that works for me. And once he said yes, right, like, does the company have to offer a competitive equity package or a competitive signing bonus, relocation, or anything else? He's basically signaled that, he's basically good with the offer, right? And by sharing an incomplete offer and just the base salary. Companies will also position their offers as like unofficial, so that, candidates who are really worried about getting the job, we feel like are more likely to say yes to them, and so they can receive the official offer. And one of the most aggressive strategies that we see recruiters do is they will say, we'd like to give you an offer, but you have to give a verbal commitment of that offer before you can get it, right? And this has happened, just recently. Company Bloomberg finance company, and literally said to our client, because of the competitiveness of your candidacy, we will need you to verbally accept the offer before we give it to you in writing. And that is just so manipulative, because if you're not even going to be honest about giving whether an offer is real or not, because verbal things are not actually real, how can you expect a candidate to be honest with you about accepting or not? But it puts you in this very uncomfortable position of feeling like you have to lie to the company just to know that you actually have an offer. Because what Bloomberg did further there is that they gave a verbal offer, said some numbers, and then backtracked on those verbal numbers, like in a second phone call, right? And it's super manipulative, but it happens. It really does. And so if a recruiter is just telling you what the base salary is, right, you should know that the compensation offer involves a base salary and usually some sort of bonus component and benefits, right? And in that bonus component for tech companies, and that usually means equity packages. For other companies, there's usually some sort of annual bonus, which is like a percentage of the raise, or both, right? Google, Facebook, etc. These companies offer both equity and an annual bonus. And then there's signing bonuses. There's signing bonuses. There's relocation benefit bonuses, and then there's benefits. And you need to hear all of these in depth before you make a decision, right? You can't negotiate just part of an offer. And so when you have recruiters just sharing parts of an offer, you want to make sure to say, I really need to hear the entire package. I need to get it in writing to know that it's real. And I'd like to take some time outside this phone call to think about it because I'm not really sure. I can't give you a good decision on the phone. And if they're giving you like an unofficial offer letter, like I think this is just like recruiter mind games, when a recruiter's saying it. And like if you've interviewed and the team likes you and they say they want to extend you an offer, I think it's pretty much safe to assume it's an official offer letter, or ask your boss or team members to clarify what the difference is between unofficial and official. I think in most cases, if the team has interviewed you and wants you, that's the officialness of your offer, and you shouldn't let the way the recruiter's positioning get in the way. And to give you an example of how important it is to like get these offers in writing, one time we were helping a client with I think it was like a data analyst offer, and this is with the recruiter, and the recruiter is being very shady about sharing information, giving anything in writing, and finally, after the recruiter shared the written offer, we found out that the offer was for a contractor position. It wasn't even for a full-time salaried employee. And she only found that out after she had interviewed for the entire company and then like was about to accept the offer until she realized that like this is for a contractor role. And so, the devil's really in the details with these things, and you want to see these things all in writing. And then, the giving a verbal commitment before you receive the offer, like, it's such a tactic because, you literally can't accept an offer until you get it in writing, right? You physically can't. You have to sign something. And so, the way to respond to them is to just say like, I am 90% there, but I cannot accept an offer until I know what it is, right? And, usually giving them some sort of deadline and saying like, I can get back to you in 48 hours. Because what they're worried about usually when they do this tactic is that you are going to take that offer and kind of run with it elsewhere. Giving a deadline sometimes helps, but just being very clear that, I have to see the offer in writing to know that it exists. Okay, so the takeaway here is, ultimately how companies out negotiate candidates is that they take advantage of this impulse, which is very natural because job searching is so arbitrary and stressful. But you all have this impulse of, I just want to be done, right? I want to be done. This is like, I want to know where I'm going to next. I don't care about the additional income or whatever. I just want to be done. And you just really want to control that impulse and be patient through the offer stage process. Like the negotiation process should be a whole nother process separate from the interview, where it's your chance to ask questions about the company, like actual questions, not just like questions you ask during the interview process to look good, to figure out if this is the right fit and you're making the right career decision, right? And asking for more information does not mean that you're going to lose the job offer. And for any company that's going to rescind a job offer because you're asking for more information, that is fundamentally a company that does not value you, and you don't want to go there anyways. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for some Q&A. Yeah, so negotiating offer from a nonprofit, it's definitely a little bit tough. I think my best advice there when it comes to negotiating for a nonprofit is to just think about stuff outside of compensation that you're looking for. So whether it's like time off or a more flexible schedule or a title or just things that maybe aren't as financially oriented. But I honestly there's lots of very, very, well-endowed nonprofits that can pay market rate. We're helping a client right now, and she's working at like a university endowment. I can't remember what nonprofit it was, but like the market conversation is high. It's like $150,000 to $180 that she's getting offers at. So nonprofits have to compete too. Just as if they want top talent, they should have to compete. And so it's definitely not that you can't negotiate. You just want to be more aware of the realities of the organization's financial realities. Okay, so in the nonprofit world, what if they tell you a salary and say there's no negotiation? That's the offer. That's it. I think that, when I hear a company say there's no negotiation, I feel like they're saying like you can't speak to us, right? There can be no communication, which really doesn't make sense if you're about to be in a long-term relationship with this company. And even companies that have no negotiation policies, they end up having wiggle room in terms of like signing bonuses or relocation bonuses or et cetera. That's at least in the tech industry. And so I think it definitely means that, how you negotiate needs to be much more exploratory and conversational. But I think you always have a right to communicate what your needs are to give this organization your best effort. I was trying to negotiate a coordinator role and they told me it was non-negotiable and everyone with that title makes X across the board for the entire company, which I confirmed, which is true when I started with them. Since we've lost the ability to negotiate upon hiring, when you mentioned is the best time, how do we grow from there going forward? Yeah, that's a promotion question. And, maybe in your specific context, I might be able to answer it, but I would probably just email me and I can try to answer that separately. Yeah. How long can you take time to think about an offer without turning off your employer? So this is like offer deadlines, and this is the next negotiation tactic. So the third tactic that companies will do is they'll apply time pressure that is not real. So to give you an example of one of our clients, Andrew receives an offer at Apple for a data science role, but still has like 4 other companies he wants to interview at. He's really interested in Apple, but he has the other opportunities he really wants to evaluate. And in the email of the offer, the recruiter says, "Excuse me, we need to know by Friday," or they might have some standard policy that is 2 weeks. Or in the offer letter, there's like a date at the bottom that says like this offer expires at XYZ. So if you guys were in Andrew's shoes and you had that deadline, how would you feel? Cool. So yes, the majority of people would feel they need to accept by the given deadline, or they'd feel nervous asking for more time. So the way they respond to this is to understand that, fundamentally, again, and going back to what I said earlier, like you are about to engage in a relationship with this company. And is a relationship ever healthy if you are being pressured to join, right? Like it's really analogous to like dating. Like is a forced relationship ever going to be a good one? And, when it comes to offer deadlines, the only real deadline for a company is the most real deadline is if the company hires someone else instead of you, right? That is the real deadline because they basically have only one, if they only have one spot and they have someone else on the table, them hiring, that is a real deadline, right? But it's actually the case that for a lot of candidates, that's actually a lot less true than they think, right? And actually in many cases, if that is true, a company would have no qualms telling you, right? So we have situations where one candidate had an offer at Yelp and he was taking like 2 or 3 weeks to negotiate it and still wanted to hear back from other offers. And so at the end of, I think, around 3 weeks, the recruiter called and said, "We have another candidate that we will make an offer to in 2 days if you don't accept," right? That is a very real deadline where they have another candidate they want to hire instead of you, right? Most other deadlines where the recruiter is saying, "We need to know by Friday," like you need to give us a decision, is really just attempts to pressure you, because it is very rare that they actually have someone else instead of you, and also that they're only hiring for one person. And so really like these deadlines are they are fundamentally more flexible than candidates realize. And, in a lot of cases, a company's extending an offer to, and like there's no one else, right? They are gonna have to re-interview, and like they actually have like a ton of time, but obviously the company's never going to explicitly tell you that. And another example of how the offer deadlines are a tactic is that many times our clients will experience significant pressure to accept the offer, and then once they say yes and they accept, the recruiter will take like several weeks to even send them the offer letter to officially sign via like DocuSigns. And so it's just another example of like, they pressure you, they pressure you, they pressure you. And then once you say yes, they're like busy. And then like, you didn't actually need to sign at that date. And so I would say that actually this is probably the tactic that is most applicable, or you want to be careful with other industries. Like in tech, it is such the case that, there is just like economic advantage for, especially engineering candidates where, they fundamentally always need to hire engineers. And so, the offers are quite extendable. I think the big takeaway for other industries is to just get a sense for why is there a deadline, right? Like literally ask them, right? Like where are you guys in your process with other candidates? I want to make sure I want to be aware of your guys' needs too, right? Obviously, I don't want to hold you on your business needs. And so tell me, like, do you have candidates at offer stage that you want to hire also, right? Can you only hire just one person? How many people are you trying to hire, right? If they don't have any other candidates at offer stage, it's unfair for them to try and get you to accept an offer in 2 days. Okay, so the three tactics in recap are that a company is going to try to always get a number from you first. You never want to share. They're going to introduce offers in confusing ways. And so you really just want to be patient and collect all the information before you make a decision and before you negotiate. And then you want to just really understand why the deadlines exist. And in like almost all deadlines, I'd say are flexible by a week. If it's really not flexible, they'll give you what's called like an exploding offer, and they'll say like, you have 48 hours, or we're hiring someone else, or we've given offers to like 5 people for 1 spot. Super messed up, but like we've heard of companies doing that too. You'll know the deadlines are real in those cases. In all other cases where they're trying to pressure you and pester you with a decision, it's just tactics. And so when I share these tactics, I think, to try to appeal to reason here for how you guys should think about this is that the only thing we advocate when we advise our clients is to just treat the company the same way they are treating you, right? Equality, right? That's the only thing you should be asking for. And if you look at the left side of this table, right, the company expects you to share what other companies you're interviewing at. But do they ever share who else they are interviewing? They expect you to share your salary expectations. But do they ever share what data is fair for how they hire and how they pay, right? They expect you to share your counter offers. Do they ever share who else they've extended offers to? And they expect you to share references, right? So they can research you. And, actually a lot of companies do back channel reference checking. So they basically dig through your LinkedIn. They try to find who's worked with you. They try to find former bosses and really get a better picture, right? The idea of like former employees sharing references is like so weird, right? But like that would be fair, right? And so just think about that in terms of just asking for equality when it comes to your relationship with the company. Okay, cool. I'll stop here and do some Q&A. So hopefully that answered the question about the time period. I think in terms of the response and how to say that tactically is, focus on the fact that you want to make a long-term commitment with the employer, and you can't make a long-term commitment under duress, right? Like it's not going to help me if you rush me into this decision, because employment is what's called at will. So like in the contracts you sign, employment is at will, which means that you can leave at any time and they can't stop you, right? And so it doesn't help to just force you in when you can leave at any time. So if the recruiter provides a base salary and it is low, should you give them your higher number? I'll answer that in the terms of mistakes. Yeah, do you have tips on how to leverage multiple offers in the salary negotiation stage? Definitely do. I will also answer that later. How do you suggest negotiating signing bonuses and start dates if you don't have other offers to use as leverage? That's a good question. I will also answer that in the next slides. What is the limit for how much you can ask before coming off unprofessional? So I think the way to think about this is that in general, you want to anchor high, right? That's just like how negotiation works psychologically. And it's actually very rare for asking high to have an adverse effect on your negotiations. Like in terms of like how most candidates think about it, their fear of negotiating is so much that like even them asking very aggressively is still well within the boundaries of what a company would be fine with you asking, like in terms of causing any type of negative repercussion. But there is some point where when you're asking super high, that it does hurt your impression. Like it just does hurt their impression of you, right? And you don't want to ask something that's like insanely high. But like that number is I think a lot higher than a lot of candidates realize. I think like 1.2 times, whatever you're being offered at is always a reasonable ask. So 20% more is always a reasonable ask. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here and go through the rest of the presentation, and then we can end the rest with more Q&A. Okay, so the top 3 mistakes candidates make when negotiating. So the first mistake that candidates make is that they fail to research before they negotiate. So you don't want to just immediately jump into a negotiation and ask for numbers. You want to first understand what is your leverage and how aggressively should you be negotiating. And so before you negotiate, once you get the offer, the first thing you want to get a sense of is your interview feedback, right? Like how did you perform relative to the other people they interviewed? You want to get a sense for how long has the company been interviewing for? And you want to get a sense for if they have other candidates at offer stage, right? That helps you with the deadlines. The next thing you want to understand is, with your boss, you want to get really clear on exactly how you're being valued, right? Ultimately, that's what negotiating is communicating what you believe you're valued to be and understanding how you're being valued by the company. And so it's really important to understand with your boss, how does your boss want you to contribute in the first year? And how does your boss want you to contribute long-term? And based off of how in-depth and how positive and how excited the boss is with those responses, it really gives you clarification on how much you're being valued and how aggressively you can negotiate. And then, other worthwhile questions are to understand kind of how does your skill set compare to the team? How does your work experience compare to the team? And then in terms of the deadline for negotiating, understanding how many people are they trying to hire, and then asking about the timeline for your start date. Okay, the second mistake that we see candidates make all the time too is just using the same basic strategy, which is, to that question about how to use competing offers is, candidates will just basically share higher offers with lower offers, right? And this is actually the suboptimal way to negotiate. And it is why, companies will always try to get what your counter offers are before making a change. Especially in the tech industry, the strategy is almost always like, share us what your counter offers are, and then we'll change your offer. But that is just advantageous because what you want to be able to do is get the companies to change without sharing your offers so that they don't just simply match the best offer that you have. And you can increase offers without having a higher offer, without sharing a counter offer, or without even having another offer. We've negotiated single offer increases many times. And, in terms of how to negotiate a single offer, you want to basically understand your leverage and understand how you're being valued. And then you want to negotiate based off of all aspects of the compensation. So base, bonuses, relocation, benefits, etc. And the biggest thing is that when you have a single offer, just because you've heard no doesn't mean you can't negotiate further. It doesn't mean you can't ask for other things, right? I can't tell you how many times we've heard no, and then we've still been able to get changes in the offer, right? So don't just take no as nothing else can change. Okay, cool. And then the third mistake that we see candidates make all the time is just really underestimating the emotions that are involved in this process, right? Like that's fundamentally how recruiters are also kind of advantageous in this, is that like they are really objective, right? Their job is independent of whether you join. Like the hiring manager is the person that's actually very fearful of losing you, right? And like that's kind of why a recruiter's there, is to kind of create that that intermediation and make it easier for recruiters to negotiate. But human psychology is, we are predisposed to loss aversion, right? We don't want to risk guaranteed things. And so a really common mistake is to underestimate just how much fear or anxiety or doubt comes through this process. Even the clients that we like have like recently we helped one that was like super confident, felt like he knew what he was doing the entire time. And then the second he got into the negotiation, like all of his confidence just went through the door. And we were almost caught in this position of like trusting him a little bit too much that he would follow kind of what his own confidence was. And so our advice here is like find an objective party, a friend, a career center, advisor, etc., to help you think through objectively what you should be asking and how you should be asking, because emotions play a huge part into this and really can affect you in negative ways. Okay, so the last thing I'll do is just kind of share a story from a client, and then we'll do the Q&A. And so, we share this story because I think it really, again, like it illuminates just like the challenge of offer negotiations is that there's so much dogma around how candidates should be negotiating, and the fact that you don't really experience pain from negotiating your offer until it's too late, right? Like you don't experience the pain of negotiating until you're 1 year into your job and you talk to your friend who's doing the same job you are, and they're making like $35,000 more because they negotiated, right? And then by that point it's too late. But so to share this client story, this client Ben got an offer at Microsoft, and he goes online, and Team Blind is one of those like anonymous resources, and he goes online and he sees his offer for his role, and they're saying the offer is good, right? So he feels like, oh, the internet says that my offer is good. He engages with Ralph, and we recommend him to ask significantly more than what he was thinking. And so he goes and talks to his friends, and all of his friends say that these numbers are really high. We've never heard of this. We wouldn't do it, right? He goes to his mentor and advisors, and his mentors and advisors say like, we haven't heard of anything above this number, 300K. We wouldn't do it either. And his family is just ultimately advocating for him to take the least risky scenario possible and just telling him to accept the offer, don't negotiate, right? And they come from this dated concept of like negotiation is just like something you never do, right? And so from every part of his trusted network, right, they were telling him not to use us. And if it weren't for the fact that he had a close friend that did use us, there was no logical reason for him to listen to our guidance. But luckily he did, and we were able to change his offer by 43% from the initial. So a significant increase. And in quoting him kind of in the experience overall, he just said, I had no idea how broken the status quo was until I was able to see the truth of my market value with Ralph. Cool. So that's it on my presentation. Thanks for coming. I'll basically just do some Q&A now for the rest of the time. Okay, so in product management, recruiters fairly often disclose range up front. In cases where they don't, I usually ask for how their compensation is laid out, get data from them first, and then back into what my salary would need to be. I don't want to waste my time on interviews if compensation is not there. Thoughts on effective and ineffective that is. I think that is effective for probably maximizing compensation. Well, actually, no. Like, I think that, it just doesn't really make sense to talk about numbers in the beginning because you just don't know if there is such a good fit with your background, the company's background, and you just don't know how a company might be willing to change. So, like, we had one client where the company was so excited about him that, but he had a significant other across the country that they offered to pay for him to be able to travel to visit her, once a quarter. Right? Just something completely completely something completely unstandardized, right? And so I think like obviously within reasonable ranges, right? Like you have some like threshold, but like I do think that it's important to, I mean, like especially equity at in all tech companies, like that's super negotiable. And so even if the base salary is super low, you don't know if maybe they're willing to give you some awesome equity package. And so, I mean, I think, obviously you want to be efficient with your time, but for companies that you're really excited about, I think it's always worth having a conversation and seeing how they might be able to accommodate. Is agreeing to a salary based on and is agreeing to revisit the salary in 6 to 8 months a good idea, or is it just something they say to get you to accept something lower? Yeah. So, for me, when we have clients who get an offer and their manager is saying like, we think you're really strong and we think that in 6 months that we can have you at, the more senior level, but we can't pay you that right now. Like 6 months is such a short time. And, usually it's the case that it's because they think that you're at that level, but they're not willing to start you there. Right. And so, I think our we don't we haven't done a ton of raise promotion negotiations, but anecdotally our data is that like yeah, like when you try to revisit in three or 6 months, it's very rare that it actually can change. When receiving a verbal offer, is it appropriate to ask what the annual bonus would be? Yes, it's 100% appropriate. How do you negotiate if your position is entry level and your resume is not impressive as it could be? Um, it really depends on the context of your situation, but if you're getting a job offer for compensation that's $100,000 or more, you have a specific skill set that the market demands that the company is trying to pay for, and you are doing a lot of. You just recognize that you're creating a lot of value for them, and so you should be at least trying to negotiate, having a conversation, if anything, to just understand how you're being valued. If you don't have another offer on the table to use as negotiation power, how do you negotiate? So again, this is single offer negotiations, and you just want to first understand your leverage and get a sense for how you're being valued by the company. Why do they want you? What are they looking for you to contribute? And then you want to remind the company you're talking to of the value you're planning to contribute. Like we have all of our clients create like a brag sheet. So while they're interviewing, keeping a little sheet to keep track of like, what are the things that the company's most excited about you to hire you, and then reminding yourself, but then also reminding the company kind of like what do they want out of you, right? It's assessing your leverage, and then it's negotiating. And in terms of negotiation, the dynamic is this, right? You have a recruiter, you have usually some sort of finance budget people, and then you have your manager, right? And the recruiter is a person that you're normally negotiating with. And then the compensation team is the person that actually changes your compensation, and the manager is the person that actually knows the value that you're going to be able to create for the company, and it should be your internal champion, right? And so, if the recruiter is saying no, you want to make sure to just have another conversation with the manager to really get a sense for, if the manager can do anything to help you and be your advocate and internal champion in the process. Cool. Let's see here. So there's a bunch more questions. I think we'll do like maybe 5 more minutes of questions. Outside of package specifics, can you recommend any more generous strategies for negotiating with smaller companies versus larger organizations? Yes. One big thing is that when you're interviewing at companies, you want to, and you're thinking about the negotiation, if you're interviewing at startups, you want to get startup counteroffers. If you're interviewing at big companies, you want to get big company counteroffers. Trying to get a startup to change their offer because you have an offer at Google is not as effective as you would think, because these companies are so different that it's actually hard to get them to make serious changes. They will likely give up, or they'll say like, we can't get anywhere close to Google. So you want to make sure to interview at competing companies, right? So if you're interviewing at this, whatever, let's say DoorDash or whatever, Uber as a startup, you want to interview at Lyft, right? You want to interview at whatever, like the other, self or driving app companies. And so make sure to interview at competing companies. That's really important to do. Yeah, in your experience, companies will say they have other candidates even when they don't. How can you tell if they're telling the truth or not? I mean, it's tough, right? Like recruiters are really good at this stuff. And in general, I would say that, try to base your understanding of what is true or not by not what the recruiter says, but by what your manager, what the team is saying to you, right? So ask your manager, ask the team. They will hopefully be more transparent. I would not do any offer negotiations during the interview. It's the dance would be this, right? You interview, you get assessed, right? They give you an offer. Then once they give you an offer, it is actually your turn to assess the company, right? And make sure that this is the right fit for your career, right? And what a lot of candidates don't realize is that it takes like months usually to get a bunch of candidates through an interview process and filter down to finally extend an offer. And so when they've extended an offer, they're already very bought into you, right? And so you asking questions and trying to figure out if this is a fit, most companies are more than willing to do that because they've already spent so much time trying to filter it all the way down to you. No specific tips for architecture. Tactics change when no recruiters are. How do tactics change when no recruiters are involved? I would say that it's in most cases just better, right? To remove the recruiter, remove the middleman, and be able to talk to the person that's actually understanding kind of your value and what you're doing for the company. I think in general, like, I would say you can't do maybe as aggressive tactics, but usually it's because like the person you're negotiating with, the manager is not going to be doing aggressive tactics on you, right? So I think one thing I'll say here is that when you are negotiating with recruiters, right, a lot of candidates are worried about the perception that the company will think, and especially if you're just dealing with the recruiting team, right? They're dealing with candidates all the time, right? And like it's okay if the recruiter's impression of you is not very good. Like one, they do these negotiations all the time, and two, what matters is the team's impression of you. It's not the recruiter. And so I wouldn't stress, on kind of what the recruiter thinks of you. Yeah. So can you go through some of the things we can ask for to improve an offer if higher salary is not possible? Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, I think essentially like what I would first brainstorm is like, what are all the things and costs I'm incurring to do my job with my company? And any of those costs, if they are to, again, do your job better for the company, you would think about bringing those into the negotiation. So I don't know, education stipends, stuff like conference stuff, you can negotiate that ahead of time. That's like an edge case. A car stipend, student loans, like helping with student loans. Yeah, there's a list. I would email me. What is the most success in increasing? Yeah, so base is typically the hardest thing to negotiate because it's the thing that is in perpetuity and companies have to pay taxes associated with it. The signing bonus and relocation bonus is probably the most like negotiable things. And I would make sure to always kind of ask if those exist and ask to receive those. Okay, cool. So we're pretty much out of time. I know there's a lot of questions, but please feel free to check out our website, send us an email, and please fill out the feedback form if you have a second. And yeah, thanks for your time.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did too. We did record this event and we'll be sharing it on our social media channels, so make sure to check us out there if you want to rewatch it to get some more info that you might miss throughout Brian's presentation. But thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great night.